Hey, everybody.
Hi, this is Rita.
This is Amanda. You're listening to
I Don't Know Her,
the podcast where we talk about women you've probably not heard of
but you will.
today.
Right? Meow.
So we have had a hell of a week, both of us.
Yeah, it's been a bitch.
So both of us are in a situation right now where we probably need, if we could just make a little bit more money, our lives would be a little bit easier.
Yep.
And so we have both the personality where we're going to do that. We're going to do everything we can to try to make our lives more comfortable. And we were just discussing how taxing that is on our psyches and our bodies and our lives and our marriages. So what is it that you're doing right now that's making you feel like it's over the top?
Oh, well, currently, so I have two jobs, and I'm a server and I'm a bartender. And I'm the sole provider for my family. You know, I'm the one that has a steady paycheck coming in every 2 weeks. And it's been like that for, I would say probably 6-7 years now. And every time I feel like any kind of financial insecurity, I'm like, I got to take more shifts. I got to do doubles. I got to, right now I was just telling Amanda, I'm doing a stretch where I'm going 12, 13 days, no break.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's insane. And also trying to be a mom and also trying to be a wife and also trying to get some exercise in and then, get the laundry done and clean the bathroom and try not to have a mental breakdown. And it's really hard. But for me, I've always been taught, you just put your head down and work your ass off if you need to. But, sometimes at the end of the night when I close my eyes, I haven't been sleeping good because my brain won't stop.
Yep.
I don't know if you ever have the problem. Do you dream about work?
Yeah, or I dream about twisted versions of work.
I dream about work like I'm still taking orders. I'm still making drinks. And I'll wake up and I'm like, I don't want to be at work. I just want my brain to turn off. And the other night, I think I woke up 5-6 times because I was still at work.
Yeah, you were still going in your brain.
Yeah.
Can't separate it. Mm-mm. So right now I am teaching full time. Well, I'm the librarian, which is a great job. I love my job. Don't ever think I don't. I fucking love my job.
She loves her job.
But it is I do that. I'm also the advisor for the GSA, and I also am a middle school track coach. So it's track season right now. And because we're short on finances, my wife hasn't brought home a paycheck for a couple of months. And I do that thing that Rita was just talking about where I throw myself into work and I make sure that everything is being met, that the bills are getting paid, that we don't have to worry about where our food's coming from.
Mm-hmm. There's gas in the car and
making sure everything is smooth and can keep going. And so I've also been proctoring the ACT and the SAT on the weekends, which I get paid for. And that cuts into my podcasting time. And I'm also training for races. And being physically fit is extremely important to my mental health. And when I say physically fit, I mean I am not like some athlete. Don't get it twisted. I still got my fupa. I rub it every night for luck.
Oh, me too. But it's man, when I can get on my bike and I can just burn some of that steam off, it does wonders.
And it's the only time of the day or week that I get to be alone, ever. And I'm sure the same can be said for you. If I am home or at work, I am being occupied by someone else. I have to give up some time to someone else. Mm-hmm. So it's the only time I get to be alone. It's the only time I get to be with my own thoughts. It's the only time I get to really unwind and kind of dive into things I'm feeling. And so that's really helpful to me, and not having that or having that time that I usually use to go running or whatever be crowded by all of these other stresses that I'm thinking about. That's really hard for me to then enjoy, and it's hard for me to feel okay. And I think that's why, so I currently didn't go for my run today because I have an injury on my left leg. And I think it's because I've been so stressed.
Oh, yeah.
That when I have gone running, I haven't been paying attention to form because my brain is thinking about everything else. And I really have to pay attention to form because when I get lazy on my form, I really hurt my lower body. It just breaks really easily. And I just am like in my head and I'm thinking about all these things and I'm working all the time. Like this week, I had one day where I was home before 7 p.m. and I leave the house at 6:45.
It's a long freaking day.
Yeah. And actually on Thursday, I didn't get home until 9 p.m. Because we had a track meet in another town and it wasn't well run. And I was there until after 7 o'clock and I met Abby for dinner and trivia. Cause I was like, I want to do something fun tonight. Like we're doing something fun, but I didn't get there till after 7:30 and then I ate and we played trivia and then I came home and I was still wired. I hadn't had a moment to like settle down.
Decompression time.
And so I was like, I guess we're going to sit up and watch TV for a little while because I can't go to sleep. And then I was exhausted on Friday.
Oh, no.
But then Friday, I didn't go running because I was like, I really need a day that I can just walk out of work. And that's the only thing I have to do today. I'm done. I can go home. And rest days are important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, not just rest for your body, but rest for your mind, too. Like, that I needed to be able to just walk away from work on Friday and not have to, like, think about anything else. And I don't think you're going to get that for a while based on what you've been telling me about your schedule.
Yeah, I was mentioning to Amanda today, I got scheduled for on Mother's Day to work. And I was like... I was a little bummed out. You know, I told my son and he was really sad because we had some plans to have some friends over and stuff. And I just got my schedule and I was like, oh, I'm working Mother's Day. But that's very much a reality for a lot of women.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, Mother's Day is work anyway. I'm trying to be okay with it, but I'm pretty sure I'll cry at some point in the day.
It hurts my heart for you that you have to work on Mother's Day.
The last Mother's Day I worked was brunch. It was Mother's Day brunch.
I remember.
And it was like the worst fucking day of my life.
I remember. You were so a mess.
Upset. It was the first and only time, and I've been a server for years, it is the first and only time I've cried on the floor. Because this one lady, I was burnt out, and she was just so mean to me. Like, even her husband looked at her and was like, what are you doing? And I started crying. And he was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, I just need a minute. And I went in the back and I cried. And then I wiped my face and went back to work. But that was also one of the best days of my life, because when my husband came and picked me up, I got in the car and I just like laid my head on his lap because I was so upset. And I heard a meow. And I thought it was my son pretending to be a cat. And then I heard another meow and I like turn around and there's a kitten in the back. And that's when I got my cat, which I am obsessed with my cat.
You guys, she is such a cat lady. It is really weird.
And I burst into tears, like violent, scary tears where my husband was like, are you okay? Like, did I do something wrong? And I just shouted, all I could say was, she's perfect. And I just bawled. And I just cuddled with this cat, this little kitten all day long. And she's my baby. So
yeah, you take really weird photos of her too.
I do. She's awesome.
The last time I saw her on Instagram, or not the last time, but the last one that made me go, oh my God, Rita, you are such a cat lady, was when you took her to the park. You're like, the whole family's at the park. And there's a cat on a leash at the park. And they're picnicking.
We had a family picnic and I was like, let's bring the whole family. So she's got a leash. It's a little purple leash. And we took her kennel and we took her to the park. And I'm laying there on a blanket, like eating my sandwich. And I have my cat and people are looking at me and I'm like, what? Yeah, it's a fucking cat. What?
I think it's adorable. And I'm glad you have your kitty to help you calm down and de-stress. And yeah. I think it's really what women do.
Yeah.
We talked about that before, about how women will just make it work and they'll find the way and they'll put their head down and keep going forward. And that's how come, you know, we want to celebrate these women, because we know how hard it is to accomplish something great while you also have all of the world on your shoulders. Mm-hmm.
And you've got people criticizing you at the same time.
Yes. Speaking of criticism, we've been really lucky here at our podcast that so far we haven't gotten any nasty grams from people about how we sound or what we talk about or how much we laugh. Mm-hmm. But I didn't tell you this. But
Ooh.
two episodes ago, or 2 or 3 episodes ago, we were giggly. I don't remember why, but we had
something was in the water that day. Yeah, we were
just laughing
loopy.
constantly, and it was just bizarre. And I was listening to it, and I was like, oh, and I was like really mean to myself. I was like, God, I hate my laugh. I wish I wasn't laughing so much. Why am I laughing? Amanda, stop laughing. And I wrote that in my notes to our editor, to Lucas. Hi, Lucas.
I did. Hi, Lucas. I did. I saw that in the notes. Yeah.
And he texted me and he was like, for what it's worth, I really enjoyed hearing all your laughter.
Oh.
And I was like, I kind of needed to hear that because I was being really hard on myself. And it's because I'm very well aware of how much shit is thrown at women on radio and on podcasts. And just today I was listening to one of my favorite podcasts, Love It or Leave It. And the host, John Lovett, was talking about how he likes having women on his show. Okay. And he's pissed because every time he has a woman on his show, people on Twitter start, like, obviously mostly men, start telling these women who are on his show that they hate the way their voices sound and the way that they laugh and the way that they do this and that with their mouths. And he was doing his little rant at the end of the show, and he was like, don't you make the whole show look bad. Like, don't do that. Mm-hmm. I invited these women to be on here. I like the way they sound. So basically fuck off.
Yeah. It almost sounds like these people don't like the sound of women enjoying themselves, or maybe.
Oh yeah. How dare they?
Yeah. Or being a little looser, actually saying what's on their mind.
And I think that is something that I still internalize. Like, I want to sound good on this podcast. I want to sound pleasant. I want to make sure my voice is something that people want to hear. And I get hypercritical of how I sound when I listen to our episodes before they are uploaded. And I sometimes I'll ask Lucas to muffle me a little or something, like just really weird ass shit. And it's because I know how people make women feel about their voices. Mm-hmm. Like, do you remember that whole controversy a couple years ago about vocal fry?
Vocal fry? No.
So vocal fry was this
vocal fry.
It was like this thing that everybody was talking about in the news a lot. And it was all about women's voices and about how millennial women like us have vocal fry, which is like where our it's kind of like our deeper register has this, like, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm going to do an over-exaggerated expression.
Okay.
Oh my God. Can you believe what she said?
It's that creaky sound?
Yeah, but I have it right now when I'm just talking. Okay. Because that's how I sound. And when all of this stuff about vocal fry was coming out, it was like basically this whole national conversation criticizing the way young women sound. and
you're like, what?
And it was like, oh, it's this trend in young women and they're making these voices sound like this, and what is to blame? I was like, bitch, fuck off. That's how we fucking sound. It's how we talk. There's nothing wrong with how we sound. There's nothing wrong with how we talk. And it just is such a specific attack on the way women sound, and we don't do this to men.
It's almost like another way to make you feel insecure about yourself.
Totally. Now not only do you have to worry about what you look like all the time, but now you need to worry about what you sound like, you old hag.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I already have like a natural lower register in my voice, but I know that, I've realized that my voice goes higher when I'm trying to do like customer service. Like, it depends on who I'm talking to. And like older people, I'll go a little bit higher up here. Hi guys, how's it going? And then like younger people, I'm like, I don't give a fucking shit.
Yeah, I think there's something to that where you're like trying to make yourself more approachable to certain kinds of people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's happening. That's what was happening when people were complaining about vocal fry. Women were like, this is just how we sound. Instead of trying to placate you by, making my register higher and sweetening my voice for you. Like, that's not how I sound. I sound like I've had too many whiskey shots in my life because I have.
I sound like I smoked for 10 years.
I sound like I smoked a lot of swag weed in eastern Montana.
We call that ditch weed in Washington.
Yeah. Ditch weed. We called it swag weed.
Swag?
I don't know. It was called swag weed where I grew up.
Those sound like superheroes, like ditch and swag.
But like the anti superhero.
They're just too stoned to get off the couch.
So they have really great fantasy lives about what they would do if they could actually do their jobs. Well, now that we kind of broke the ice a little bit, I think we're ready.
I think we're ready too.
We didn't talk about who should go first. So is yours long, short, tough?
Mine's a little longer.
Mine is longer too, but mine is pretty lighthearted, I would say.
Mine's very challenging.
All right, let's start with yours. We'll end on lighthearted.
Okay. So the woman I'm going to talk about today is Libby Riddles.
I think she's on my list, so I think I've looked her up, but I don't remember who she is.
The first lady of the Iditarod.
Yes, she was on my list, but I didn't research her. I just had her on the list.
Yay. I was really scared that I always have this impending doom. I gotta stop that.
Yeah, well, I knew her name.
Yeah.
And I knew I had looked her up, but I look up a lot of women. Mm-hmm. So
I believe that.
You could have told me that she invented the blender and I would have been like, yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, yeah. All right. So Libby was born on April 1st in 1956 in Madison, Wisconsin, to Willard and Mary Riddles. And she grew up in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I couldn't find a lot of information about Libby's early childhood. So it kind of takes a jump here. I'm just letting you know. So just before her 17th birthday, she and a boyfriend moved north to Nelchina, Alaska.
Oh, that's really far north.
Very.
I was like, you said north, and I was thinking she was going to go up to northern Minnesota.
She said she was done with the lower 48. And
I guess
go north. Yeah.
I would have gone to Hawaii, but I guess Alaska is where it's at.
She said they had a dream of a life of solitude and adventure.
Well, you'll have that. Mm-hmm. It'll be very solitary in Alaska.
So they tried their hand at homesteading near Stony River outside the Alaskan range, where they learned to live off the land from a few Alaskan Native friends that lived around them. By the time she was 20, she was proficient in moose hunting and elk hunting, and she had built a log cabin.
Whoa.
So she's really getting down with it.
So there was a part of me for a while that wanted to be just like that.
Me too.
And I'm glad I didn't do that, because that is hard ass work. Your body is being taxed so heavily.
I love hard labor, but the solitude, because I thought I'm going to get a cabin in the woods and I'm going to be by myself and I'm going to chop wood every day and boil my own water, make my own soup. And, it was a fantasy. But then I was like,
you don't boil your own water now?
It's pre-boiled. My husband boils it for me. I meant in a kettle, on the fire. That's what I meant.
Oh, okay. Just oh no, we're laughing.
Oh dear God. So in this area of Alaska, that's where Libby got to see her first sprint dog races. She fell in love with the races, but she especially fell in love with how the dogs seemed to love the racing. Libby was an avid dog lover too, and she really enjoyed the relationship between owners and the racing dogs. She got her first sled dogs in 1975 from her friends Jerry Riley and Patty Friend, and she trained them right out of her cabin in Nelchina. This is a quote from Libby. She said, "I always knew I was going to have a lot of animals. I saw pretty quick you could have 40 sled dogs and nobody would think you were crazy."
Okay, it's a good thing there's no such thing as sled cats, because you would have way too many cats and you'd be like, what? They're my sled cats.
You're not familiar? No, watch. So she said, "I liked Huskies because they are more independent and you really have to earn their trust and win them over and work with them." In 1978, when she was 22 years old, she entered a small race, the Klein's Mini Mart Sprint, in which she surprisingly won first place. She had no experience.
Wow.
Yeah. So as part of her prize, she received a lead dog from Rick Swenson, who had won an Iditarod. She won a dog, yeah. Like he raced and he bred dogs. And so part of the prize was she got like an official like lead racer dog.
That's great.
Awesome.
They're really expensive.
They are so expensive.
Yeah.
So after winning a couple more sprint races with a very small team, Libby wanted to give the Iditarod a chance. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Iditarod and what it entails.
Yeah, my entire knowledge of the Iditarod is that from that movie that was based on a children's book that starred Ethan Hawke. Yes!
I love that movie.
That is my entire knowledge of the Iditarod is from Iron Will.
Fruitcake. So the Iditarod is 1,152 miles long. It's a trans-Alaskan race called the roughest, most beautiful terrain Mother Nature has to offer. It has jagged mountain ranges, frozen rivers, dense forest, desolate tundra, miles of windswept coast, temperatures that drop below zero, winds that cause complete loss of visibility, long hours of darkness, and you have some of the most treacherous climbs and side hills. All doing this on a sled with your dog team.
What is the average how long does it take average
like as people in the race or
yeah, I guess like what's the like if you were training and you wanted to do how long does it take to go that far with the
3
sled?
weeks.
Okay. So I was just trying to like think about those really long races like that. Or like we talked about Grandma Gatewood on the AT.
Oh yeah.
You know, that's over 2,000 miles long and it takes like 4 months to walk it. So it's like if you were racing that with sled dogs, like how long would it take?
How long would that take?
So that's interesting. So like about 3 weeks.
About 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that's too, when they prepare for about 3 weeks when they bring their stuff on their sled. And so the race goes from Anchorage in south central Alaska to Nome on the western Bering Sea coast. The musher can only have on their sled an Arctic parka, a heavy sleeping bag, an axe, snowshoes, musher food, dog food, and boots for each dog's feet to protect them from cutting ice and hard packed snow injuries, because that does happen. It'll get up in their paws and it's really painful. Also, no boots means no racing. So if your dogs lose their boots, you're disqualified.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, you have to consider the dog's well-being.
But if the boot falls off and you have a replacement, is that okay?
You have a replacement, yeah.
Okay, because like Abby took our dog snowshoeing in February, you know, when we got that big dump of snow. She took Rocky snowshoeing and she put the booties on him, right? Which is a miracle in and of itself because he almost bites your face off if you touch his feet. But somewhere along the way, one of them came off and she didn't have any idea until she got closer to home and another one had fallen off. She caught that one, but the other one she had no idea. So it's like, I wonder if you're going, you don't even realize. Is it like immediate or?
If they catch you. So you have to have replacements. Yeah. And there's checkpoints. So they're like monitoring what's going on with your dogs. And also, so 16 dogs to a team. So if you're thinking of the food that they have to carry.
That's a lot of food.
It's a 50, 60 pound dog. These dogs need 10,000 calories a day each.
Oh my gosh.
So imagine the amount of food you have to carry in between the checkpoints to keep them fed.
So they can replenish at the checkpoints?
Yes. Okay,
that's a little better. I was like, if you had to pack all of the food that's going to feed all 16 dogs for 3 weeks, that would be a semi of
food. And I guess they make like special food, like
super high calorie, slow release,
concentrated, and like a lot of the mushers will do a special one per each dog. So they like learn what their dogs need and like specific to each dog. So then they'll make foods that match their dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. They love their dogs.
Yeah.
So in 1980, she placed 18th in the Iditarod. She placed 20th in 1981. So after those races, she decided that she wanted to breed her own dogs to form a relationship she thought was necessary to win. This is a quote from Libby. She said, "To raise our own dogs from puppies, from the time they are small, we show them that we are fair, that we are patient, that we are consistent, that they can trust us. We know what we're doing. And it is a two-way street. There are times when you are out there mushing in blizzards, when you can't hardly see your team, and you've got to go anyway. When it's like that, it's my turn to trust them. They have senses for finding the trail that I don't. We have to work together." I love that she respects her dogs so much. Because I was a little, when I found the subject, I was like, I don't know, because I had heard that some people are real cruel to their dogs. They're just trying to win. But she seems like she has a real genuine love and relationship for her dogs.
I don't think you can't consistently be good at that job and then have a shitty relationship with your dogs.
Because they won't work with you.
No, yes, dogs have have evolved to be basically our servants and companions, but they know how to take off.
Mm-hmm. Bye.
Yeah.
So she moved to CYCLIST near Nome, where she worked as a fish buyer and seller and saved money. There she started to train her dogs and herself in Arctic conditions. She soon moved to Teller, where she met and became partners with Joe Garney. So I looked up a little bit.
Wasn't she married before?
She had a boyfriend that she moved to Alaska with, not hide her hair of what happened with the boyfriend.
I guess he didn't matter.
She had her cat. Maybe he kept the cabin. I don't know.
She was like, to the left, to the left.
So Joe, I did a little research on Joe. So Joe was a famed Alaskan Inupiat native musher. He was mushing since he was 5 years old. And his uncle actually raced in the very first Iditarod.
Oh, wow.
So Joe agreed to breed and train dogs together with Libby, splitting the cost to work with her.
And they were just like musher partners? They weren't like...
They weren't partners.
Okay.
Not that I saw, anyway. No, actually, it said that Joe was married and he had 6 kids.
Okay.
So no. So the arrangement was Libby was more than happy with it because training went year round. There was travel costs, there was equipment and food costs. And since Libby ranked so low in the Iditarods that she had already done, she was getting 0 sponsorship. So this was all coming out of her own pocket.
Her own pocket.
So she needed to partner with somebody. So in 1985, it's race day. Libby said she felt ready. She was mentally and physically capable. On the very first day of the race, she lost her team.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
They ran off?
Yes.
Became
I'll tell
unhitched?
you what happened.
Oh, Jesus.
So she stops to rest. She ties her dogs to a tree, which you're supposed to do. And she said she had this lead dog. His name was Bugs. And there was 3 teams that passed them all at the same time. And she said Bugs hated being passed. So he got up and he got all the other dogs to get up and started pulling on all of their rope and got it super knotted around the tree. And they were getting all tangled up because he was trying to chase the other teams because he wanted to go.
Yeah.
So she didn't want to cut the rope because she only had limited rope. So she's like, how do I get them untangled? So she started to chop the tree down to be able to get the rope undone. Well, the dogs were pulling so hard, it snapped.
Oh, no.
And so she jumps and dives after it, grabs onto the piece of broken tree. The dogs dragged her for 3 miles. And she finally lost control.
3 miles.
And she lost control and she let go. And so she says her team goes away. She's laying there face down on the floor. And she said, I thought to myself, I just wasted the last 4 years of my life it took to come back and do my best in this stupid race because I'm a moron. I screwed up. I should just go home.
Oh, so God.
She's feeling fully defeated.
Yeah,
and
no
then
kidding.
she said she snapped out of it and she said, shut up to herself. And she said, go get your dogs. So she ran after her dogs. Luckily, there was a team ahead of her that saw the dogs had gotten away. They stopped the dogs. They tied them to a tree and she was able to reunite with them down the trail.
But her sled is back 3 miles.
Yeah. So she had to carry it. She had to push it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So she reunited with her team, but she wasn't giving up. So her and her team were resting 4 hours at a time at checkpoints. I don't know how many checkpoints there are. At the CYCLIST checkpoint, a storm was pummeling the coast, and Libby contemplated leaving for Kayuk, which is the next checkpoint on the other side of the Norton Sound. She asked advice of a local elder, and they decided that the storm could possibly die down, and that was her shot. She said, "When does a person get a chance to be the lead in the Iditarod? I wasn't going to blow it. I took a risk, but I thought I knew what I was doing." She left Shaktoolik, and someone told her, "You're crazy. This is impossible." She's about halfway across, and the storm got worse.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it got so bad that Libby had to hunker down inside her sled for 12 hours with with the dogs.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, so the storm
That'd be so scary.
2 was so bad that search and rescue was almost going to start looking for her. But her partner, Joe Garney, said, "Just give her a day. She's fine."
Well, I'm glad he had faith.
Yeah. So Libby describes a little bit of the ordeal. She said, "It was grim. I could not see one trail marker to the next. I let my dogs go only so far that I could barely see the marker behind me because I didn't want to lose that sucker. So when that was at the edge of my visibility, I put my snow hook in and I walked up ahead of the dogs until I could see the next marker. And then we repeated that process. It was very slow. And for some idiot reason, the dogs trusted that I knew what I was doing." So the storm did stop. It gave her the advantage, and a day later, she arrived in Koyuk. She was 50 miles in the lead from the last checkpoint.
Whoa, that's a lot of a lead.
So while back at the other checkpoint, the other racers had barely left that morning as a pack together, and she was already 50 miles ahead. So she ultimately covered the 1,152-mile trail in 18 days, in 20 minutes and 17 seconds. 3 hours faster than the second place finisher. She was only 28 years old, and she took a prize of $50,000.
That's awesome.
I know.
That's amazing.
That's a chunk of change, yeah. And this is also, by the way, out of 61 teams. So Libby's written 3 books of her Iditarod race, including a children's book, which is called Storm Run, the story of the first woman to win the Iditarod sled dog race. She also became a professional speaker, talking about her life, about racing, and advocating for the care and the breeding of dogs. In 2007, her Iditarod Trail race victory was inducted into the Alaska Sports Hall of Fame. The Iditarod Trail Committee President Leo Rasmussen said this about Libby: "The shockwaves of a woman doing what only men had done before brought attention to the Iditarod in a way it never had received. What Libby did proved was that women could compete with and defeat men with conditions that were completely equal. A rarity in the sports world.
Yeah,
no
no
handicaps."
kidding.
Yeah, he said no handicaps, no special consideration. Men and women were pitted against the elements and against each other. And a woman showed she was best.
I love that. Like, that one was like, there's complete equality in this race. Mm-hmm. And she still kicked everybody's ass.
Yeah.
She was how far ahead of the next person?
50-mile lead.
Gosh.
Yeah. She said, "I will always tell people, if you're really thinking about doing it, it might be good to work with the kennel first and really make sure that you want to make the commitment. Because once you get those dogs, you're responsible for their lives and they're responsible for yours." So Libby's still alive. She still lives in Alaska, and she raises dogs and does like a few small races. And as of now, Libby says, "I only have 26 dogs. I want to keep it small."
I can see you saying that about your cats.
Oh, I'm working on that second one, man.
I know you are, but you live in an apartment. You know?
I don't care. I will have my cats, and I will be their queen.
I'm sure you will.
Yeah, I love this story about Libby. I mean, just so treacherous and so compelling. And I mean, for her to brave those elements, I don't even like going outside when my hair's wet. Like,
I grew up in conditions that are kind of similar to Alaskan conditions because I grew up on the plains of eastern Montana on the Canadian border.
oh, wow.
And the worst winter of my life was the year I was in 8th grade. And the conditions that year, the winter storms that kept pummeling us, and we also were on the High Line, so we have incredibly terrible wind. Like, a good day is 20 mile an hour winds. Mm-hmm. That's like, hey, there's a breeze today. That's it.
Jeez.
And here, that's like when our wind is terrible.
Yeah.
So that one winter was so bad, and this is something I'll never forget. We would have to drive to North Dakota when I had braces to go to my orthodontist appointments. And there had been a big storm that had just passed through, and we decided we were still going to go. And we were on the road, and the road stopped existing because the entire plains in the road were all one level of white.
Yeah.
So we couldn't tell if we were still on the road or driving in a field. And we were passing this field full of cattle, and we realized they were dead.
Oh my God.
Standing up, frozen to death while they were like alive. You know, they had been standing in this winter weather and they had froze to death. And that is like really, really rare.
I've never seen anything like that.
And I hadn't either. And we saw deer like that. And then we were passing through these two hills on each side of the road. Mm-hmm. And I was like, Mom! And she, slams on the brake. We almost go sideways. She's like, what is happening? I was like, look. And there was a car buried into the hill. Like, all I could see was one tiny little window of the car.
Jeez.
So we got out and we tried to figure out if there was anybody inside of the vehicle because they were going to die if they were left in there.
Yeah.
And thankfully there wasn't anybody in there. But there was a man who was a friend of mine who died that year after a Super Bowl party. Because he gotten drunk during the Super Bowl party, got in an argument about whatever happened during the game. Mm-hmm. And he was like, fine. And he walked out. And it was probably like 30 degrees below zero.
Oh, my goodness.
And I guess nobody thought to go, hey, we should probably go after him. And he decided to walk home, but it's in the middle of nowhere. And he wasn't even in town. And he started walking and he froze to death on the side of the road within 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like when you talk about things like this Iditarod and the weather that she was facing, I have faced that, and it is something I would not wish on my worst enemy. It is horrendous. When my wife came to visit my hometown the very first time, and she had gotten like a little chip in her windshield. And as we moved across the state, the closer we got to my hometown, the farther the crack across the windshield went. And it finally reached end to end by the time we got to my hometown. Gosh. And the temperature gauge read -27.
Oh my God.
And she was like, why the fuck does anyone live here? And I was like, I don't know. I don't for a reason. Yeah.
There was too. I wanted to make a note. There was another woman that was in the same race as Libby, and her name was Susan Butcher. She actually came in contact with a moose, and the moose went insane. Like, I mean, it's a wild animal.
Yeah.
It just did what wild animals do, and I guess it killed 2 of her dogs.
Yeah, when they think they're wolves.
Yeah. So they injured her dogs, or they killed 2 of her dogs, and then it injured her and like 13 other people.
Oh, wow.
So it took a lot of people too out of the race. But I mean, that's what you're facing out there too. You're not you're not alone out there.
Yeah, you're not.
That woman Susan ended up coming back, and she won. I think she won 3 Iditarods in a row, and she was the first woman to win it 3 times in a row.
Wow.
First person, actually, woman or man, 3 times in a row.
Well, congrats to both of those women, and kudos. Thank you for telling that story.
Yeah. I got my information from LibbyRiddles.com. There's a lot of pictures of her dogs and her and 2 of the Iditarod. PetCentral.com, Chewy.com, AmericaComesAlive.com. The New York Times actually wrote an article when she won, so I actually got to read the actual 1985 article, which was really cool. Iditarod.com, theArcticSounder.com, and a little bit of Wikipedia. Wikipedia had like 2 lines about her, and I was like, really?
Yeah, and I think that I remember opening up the Wikipedia, and I remember opening up her website, and I remember just like skimming it. So I knew her name, and I knew that she won the Iditarod, but I didn't really know anything else. So I think that's really cool. I also love that you threw in that stuff about Susan Butcher. Mm-hmm. Cool.
Sweet. All right, I'm ready for you.
Well, I also have an adventurer.
Alrighty.
I am going to talk about Annie Londonderry.
I don't know her.
She was the first woman to bicycle around the world.
Ooh, okay.
And I thought, since I was inspired because I'm doing a duathlon soon, which is a bike and road, like running race. So you run, bike, run. Mm-hmm. because I can't swim, so I'm not doing that anytime soon. And I was thinking about how I really need to get on my bike right now, and it's been a season where that's been very difficult because it's been really terrible weather, and then very, very windy and rainy, like now that it's no longer snowing.
Yeah.
But Rita's been getting out there on her bike, and remember, I long time ago on the podcast we talked about that she has a hashtag for it.
Hashtag a bike named Betty.
Yeah, so you should go look that up. So I thought you'd enjoy this person.
Sweet.
And Londonderry is not her real name, so we'll get to that in a bit.
Intrigue.
So Annie Cohen was born in 1870 in Riga, Latvia, to Levi and Beatrice Cohen. She was the middle child of 5, with 2 older and 2 younger siblings. Her family emigrated to the U.S. in 1875, and they settled in Boston. They lived in tenement housing on Spring Street, so obviously not well off. Mm-hmm. Not long after arriving, Annie did become a citizen of the United States. Her and her siblings did. Her father died in January of 1887, and her mother died shortly after. So now they've left orphaned.
Yeah.
And her oldest sibling, Sarah, had already married and moved to Maine. So that meant that Annie and her older brother, Bennett, needed to take care of the family. And Annie was just 17 at the time.
Oh, wow. It's really young.
Yeah. And their younger siblings that they were taking care of, Rosa and Jacob, were only 8 and 10.
Oh.
Yeah, can you imagine being a 17-year-old in charge of an 8-year-old?
No.
Like, that's...
And of their well-being, and you're basically their mother?
You're suddenly a mother to an 8-year-old. They're like, that's
insane.
That would be so difficult. And not long after their parents' deaths, both Bennett and Annie ended up getting married themselves, and they moved their spouses into the home that they shared with their siblings.
Oh.
So they became a very big, large, extended family. And I thought actually that was kind of neat because now there's 2 dads and 2 moms to take care of these kids. But I mean, honestly, they were just kids themselves. Mm-hmm. So Annie married a man named Simon, nicknamed Max Kopchowski, when she was 18.
Max?
I don't know. But he was Max Kopchowski, and she was 18 when they got married.
Very young.
Yeah, exactly. Over the next 4 years, they had 3 children, Bertha, Libby, and Simon. Max was a devout Orthodox Jew, and he spent lots of time at the synagogue and studied the Torah, but not much is known about the work he did, like as for a job. Some sources said he was a peddler. And I was
What's a peddler?
Well, it's like a sells things, but it has a negative connotation usually.
Yeah.
Like
to peddle something is almost like what we would call a hustle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, and then when the New York Times mentioned him, they said he was a businessman. I was like, I think you're just being real generous with that term. Annie was a Jew as well. He's just really devout, and he's Orthodox, and he's studying the Torah and speaking Hebrew and stuff like that. She seemed a little bit more, based on what I could read about her, she seemed a little bit more like less devout, maybe just a little bit more like, I don't know, average amount of religious, I guess.
A teaspoon of religiousness.
So I'm guessing that because he was really into his faith, I'm guessing that he just didn't really work a lot. Like he spent a lot of time at the synagogue because Annie, even at this time, it's the 1890s. Yeah. She is working as a salesperson for a Boston newspaper. She was selling ads in the paper. Ooh. So she would go to businesses and convince them to buy ads in the newspaper.
Wow. She was in advertising. That's pretty legit.
Well, and like I said, like it's the 1880s, 1890s. Like we're not talking about
like the 1920s or 1930s.
Well, and like Mad Men.
Yeah.
Mad Men was all about the ad industry, the advertising industry, and fucking Don Draper wouldn't let Peggy be a full-blown copywriter. No. She was supposed to be a secretary. Yeah. So it's like, it's I think pretty cool that she was able to get this kind of job so early before any of that was really done. And
I like how she's in sales and he's a peddler.
And I will say that her personality seems like she was well suited to selling ads. She could convince people of a lot of things.
Oh, I'm good at that.
Yeah, she's, I don't know. I think I'm on a trend of like picking out women who like to lie. So at this point, Annie, it's the 1890s. So she's living in the 1890s United States. And this happens to coincide with the bicycle craze in the United States. This is when like bicycles were like the hot commodity. Everybody had a bike. Everybody wanted a bike. Everybody saved money to buy a bike.
The new hot toy. Yeah.
And it wasn't just a toy because it provided so much mobility to people who previously couldn't be mobile.
It was independence.
Yes, absolutely. And it was extremely a tool of emancipation and freedom for women. And it actually, for a long time at this point, like because the bicycle was becoming so popular and because women were trying to ride it, there were like pastors and like these crazy Christian temperances women who were like, women shouldn't ride the bike. It's uncouth. And so it was just this, it really did help women become independent. And in fact, Susan B. Anthony said at this time that the bicycle had, quote, done more to emancipate women than anything else in the world.
And gave them a taste of freedom, yeah.
And there were a lot of like, I ended up reading almost this entire book called something like the two wheels that changed the world or something like that.
Okay.
And it's all about women and bicycles.
Okay.
And like the evolution of women in bikes and having bikes and how that led to the suffragist movement, how it led to the women having the right to vote and being able to have jobs and blah, 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 and wear pants. It's because of the bicycle.
Yeah.
So in 1894, Annie, okay, I'm just going to put a little caveat here. I mentioned that Annie was a bit of a liar. So
yeah.
I'm not sure that this is true.
Oh, no.
And I'll get to that in a second. So in 1894, Annie became aware of an alleged bet between two wealthy Bostonian businessmen. 10 years earlier, in 1884, a man named Thomas Stevens had ridden a bicycle around the world in 32 months. So one man bet the other that a woman could never accomplish this same feat. The wager was $20,000 to $10,000 that the woman would fail.
That's a lot of money.
Uh-huh.
So one said she would fail and one said she could?
She would win. Yeah.
She would win. Okay.
For reasons that aren't clear, Annie was the one chosen to do this or volunteered to be the woman who did this. Now let's talk about why that's weird. She was a very unlikely choice. One is that she was a Jew living in Boston. And I didn't really realize this, but apparently Boston was like the epicenter of anti-Semitism in the country.
Okay. Shit.
Yeah, I didn't really realize that,
Me
but
neither.
apparently it was like virulently anti-Semitic in Boston. And she had a very Jewish name. She was Kopchovsky. So that was is that like she would be a weird woman to choose for this because she was a Jew.
Yeah.
Also, Annie was married and she had 3 children. And under the age of 6, by the way. And this was at a time when expectations for women and the rigidities that were imposed upon them were at their highest. Like women had very specific roles to do, and this definitely wasn't it.
Yeah.
But the biggest reason why this is weird is because Annie had not ridden a bike ever until like 2 or 3 days before she sets off on this journey.
What?
She didn't know how to ride a bike.
Okay.
So I have no idea why she was the one who was chosen or volunteered or however that came about.
Yeah, who's just going to be like, oh, you know what?
But it was written about in all these... So this is a weird thing that was happening in this time. Is like people would do a public bet and it'd get like printed up in the newspaper.
Well, it was like sensationalism. It was supposed to be like a page 6. It was supposed to be something that people were going to talk about. People needed entertainment. They didn't have TVs and internet and all that crap.
You're exactly right. So she was great at sensationalism, and we're going to dive into some of her sensational claims.
Okay.
So here was what the stipulations were for this ride. One is that the rider had to start her journey penniless.
No money.
Nothing.
I would drop that bike and be, fuck you.
And she could not accept handouts along the way.
Then how is she supposed to do that? Okay, I'm just going to listen.
And she had to finish the journey in 15 months.
Okay.
That guy before did it in 32.
And he did it in 32 months and she had to do it in 15?
Yes.
So half.
Along the way, she also has to earn at least $5,000. So she has to figure out a way to earn money. Not only does she start with no money, but she's got to figure out how to earn money along the way.
Okay.
And she has to have signatures from consulates around the world to prove that she was there.
Okay.
If she succeeded, Annie would receive $10,000. The average year salary at this time was $1,000.
Ooh, so that's a big...
Yeah, it would be like if we
money.
got fucking like $3 million.
Yeah.
I would be like, I'd do almost anything for $3 million.
I will eat the damn bike. I don't care.
I will travel wherever you want on that damn bike. Just give me the money. So on June 27th, 1894, Annie set off from the Massachusetts State House on her journey across the world. A crowd of 500 came to see her off. Proving that she was already a very clever and cunning woman, she'd arranged to be sponsored by New Hampshire's Londonderry Lithia Spring Water Company, who handed her a crisp $100 bill to start her on her way.
Okay, there you go.
In exchange, Annie hung a placard advertising the company on her bike and agreed to take on the name Annie Londonderry for the duration of the trip.
Fucking advertising.
And like throughout this trip, she just basically becomes a cycling billboard.
Yeah.
She has her whole bike, her everything, her body is covered in advertisements for her companies. She like looks like a modern day race car driver.
She would be that person like on the commercial who has the bottle like right next to their face.
Yes.
Every day, right when I wake up, I drink Londonderry water.
So that was basically it. So let me go back to the bet. So later on, her great grandnephew is the one who ends up writing about her. Mm-hmm. And he believes that it was not real, that this whole bet thing was like made up, perhaps by her or in collusion with this company that sells bikes that wanted to have publicity so that people would buy more of their bikes. Mm-hmm. So that potentially is where that came from. But I didn't find any information that clearly stated this is where this came from. Mm-hmm. Annie had packed only 2 essential items.
Oh, no.
A pair of clean underwear and a revolver.
Well, you know, that
I
sounds
love that
nice and tidy.
I love that she packed a revolver. I was like, that's smart on your part.
Yep.
And so somewhere described it as a pearl-handed revolver.
Ooh.
Do you remember those?
Yes.
Oh, they're so pretty. So when it was time to ride, she set off on a 42-pound Columbia women's bike while wearing a long skirt, corset, and high collar.
No.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And in the book I was reading, the like 2 wheels that changed the world or whatever, they were talking about how women who had to ride in dresses would like almost break their necks. Like it would get tangled up in the spokes. They'd be thrown from the bike would land on them. Like it was
Jeez.
really super dangerous.
Messy. Yeah.
And when those corsets, you can't breathe.
No.
How is she supposed to get anywhere in that outfit?
Yeah. You're going to be going really slow.
And remember how I said how heavy her bike was?
Yeah.
It's 42 pounds.
Yeah.
She is 5'3", 100 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
So the bike is almost half her weight.
Jeez.
She's tiny.
Tiny.
And she has to pedal this fucking 42-pound bike across the world. So that didn't go well.
No.
The start of her trip is completely disastrous.
Womp womp.
It took her 3 months to get from Boston to Chicago.
Oh, jeez.
And when she did, by the time she'd gotten there, she'd lost 20 pounds.
Oh my gosh, she's 80 pounds. She's like shaking on this bike.
She knew at that rate that she'd never reach San Francisco before the snow started to fall over the Rockies. Mm-hmm. So she was like, I'm fucked. I can't do this. Mm-hmm. So she's like, I'm gonna stop doing this. I'm not gonna do this. But a bicycle company called Sterling Cycle Works had talked to her in Boston before she had left and said, when you get to Chicago, come talk to us. So she was like, I guess I'll do this meeting that I said I was going to do. So the company offered to sponsor her entire trip.
Ooh.
And gave her an ivory gold men's bicycle. And the men's bicycle was 20 pounds lighter than the women's bike that she had been riding. However, it didn't have a brake.
That's kind of necessary.
And it was a single gear.
Oh, God.
It was a fixie.
Oh, my gosh. This is terrible.
So she decided to head back east. And she also decided before she left Chicago that she would switch what she was wearing. And she switched into bloomers.
Good.
And I looked at the bloomers because I wanted to make sure I really understood what bloomers were.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was a cheerleader, bloomers were those underwear you had to wear underneath skirts. That's not what bloomers were in the 1890s. They were like these pants, but they look like skirts. Like they're billowy pants.
Yeah.
Each leg is like a skirt. And they were very controversial at the time. Like, there were people that wanted to outlaw them altogether.
Oh, my gosh.
They said that bloomers and women riding bikes, like the combination was like women who were trying to take over men's positions.
And we got to protect
God
that
forbid.
male fragility.
So this was controversial, and bloomers eventually fell out of style anyway. Most women cyclists ended up riding really short skirts because they liked the way they looked better because the bloomers looked a little silly.
I was going to say, bloomers look kind of dumb.
They were. After changing her clothing and her bike, her ride back to Boston was actually pleasurable and quite easy. So she decided when she got back to Boston that she was going to continue.
Yeah.
So she's now ridden from Boston to Chicago and then back to Boston. But once again, she was like, she's a very smart lady. She was like, you know what? They didn't say anything about the amount of miles I had to spend on the bike.
What?
Because that other guy rode the whole thing on his bike, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't say that she had to clock a certain number of miles. They just said she had to do this ride in 15 months.
Yeah.
So she was like, I don't have to ride my bike everywhere. I can use other modes of transportation. I just need to spend some time on the bike. So she gets on a boat to France with her bike and sails over to France. However, when she gets to France, they don't know who the hell she is. They don't know what she's doing. And so they confiscate her bike. They take her money. And the press in France just has a field day. And they say all these nasty things about her appearance.
Oh, jeez.
But she finally gets it all back. And she starts on her way in France. And the whole way across France, she alternates between her riding the train and being on her bike. So she'll take the bike on the train and then go from place to place. And so you talked earlier about the sensationalism and like that's how you got in the press. Yeah. Like you want to, newspaper people wanted to sell newspapers.
Create a story.
And you would create a story, right? So like when she got to Marseille, she had... she rode into town, like the reporters were waiting, right? So she rode into town. This is the weirdest shit, with her right ankle on the handlebars wrapped in a bandage.
How do you do that?
I don't even know. I'm like, how did she steer?
I was like physically like, how do you? I was trying to.
So she did that like she was injured. And I don't think she actually was. By the time she left France, she had just 8 months left to complete the entire rest of the journey across the world. Once again, though, she used her loophole. She boarded a boat, headed to Asia. She passed through the Mediterranean, made several stops in the Middle East. And all the way, she would take these short trips on her bike so that it could count. So she'd like take a train or a boat to a place, ride around to the next town, get on a boat or a train. She repeated this in Egypt, Jerusalem, Yemen, and the same in Colombo and Singapore. She did do short travels through Japan and China on her bike. And her time in China isn't very well recorded. They were in the middle of a war at the time. And she claimed that she was shot in China.
Come on.
I don't think that happened.
I don't think that happened.
And that she also then cycled from China to Siberia, which I don't think she did that either.
I don't think that's possible.
I don't think so either. On March 9th, 1895, she sailed from Yokohama, Japan to San Francisco. And she arrived on March 23rd and began her trek across the United States back to Boston from San Francisco. And along the way, she would, even when she was in her like other countries, but really when she was in America, she really was making that sweet paper.
Nice.
She was stopping at like places and giving lectures, and she would do lessons on cycling and all this stuff. And of course, each one of those things she earned money for. Because remember, she had to earn $5,000.
She had to get $5,000.
So now she's really close to reaching her goal. All she has to do is ride from San Francisco to Boston, and then she'll be done.
Okay.
But this is, of course, when everything starts to go wrong.
Oh, no.
Shortly after leaving San Francisco, she and another cyclist nearly died when a runaway horse and wagon ran into them.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. Like, this was bad. Like, everything was bad.
Yeah.
So, of course, Ever, the salesperson, she claims that she'd been knocked unconscious, was taken to the hospital in Stockton, California, and spent 2 days coughing up blood.
Oh, gosh. She coughed up that bullet.
In reality, she was in Stockton, California. This is true. But she was at Mozart Hall giving a lecture, which she was paid for.
Wow.
I love her lying lies. So frequently, cyclists who were doing any kind of long distance traveling would travel along these service roads that were alongside the railroad tracks. Mm-hmm. And the service roads were never meant to be like used as real roads. Mm-hmm. They were meant to help build and maintain the railroad. So they were always just like packed dirt, and they'd have big divots in them. And especially if there was any kind of weather that had gone through, like, they would have sinkholes and
they're
all
pretty
kinds
shoddy
of stuff. So that's really having an issue for her. And about 60 miles outside of Yuma, Arizona, the road punctured her tire, and then she had to carry her bike. And she came upon a house and knocked on the door to try to get help. The woman who answered the door was so frightened by her appearance that she slammed the door in her face. Annie then turned north and headed for Wyoming, which was that was a really rugged path.
Yeah.
To go through the mountains. After getting through Wyoming, then she started to go east through the Midwest. And she took a train across Nebraska.
I would hope so.
She claimed it was because of the muddy roads.
Yeah.
I'm like, or you just wanted to speed this trip up. And so then she gets back on her bike when she gets to Iowa. So when she's in Iowa, she's near this town called Gladbrook, and this is the next serious accident that she has. This is a real accident.
Okay. A real one.
Well, going downhill, remember she has no brake.
No brake.
Well, going downhill, she's coming down fast, has no way to stop, and there's a whole gathering of pigs.
Oh no! Oh no!
She runs directly into the pigs, flies over the pigs, lands, and breaks her wrist.
Oh, geez.
And she was still in a cast by the time she is making it into Chicago. So she kept on anyway. It sounds like because there was a cyclist that ran into the wagon and horse.
Yeah.
It sounds like she must have had like people who were cycling with her or whatever.
I was wondering that. I was like, does she have anybody that's just like with her, or?
It doesn't say specifically, but it'll just casually mention that there was this other cyclist on the road. And I was like, cycling was very popular, so it could have just been that there was another
Somebody
person
was there. Yeah.
But it says that when after this happened with the pigs, there were two cyclists who decided they wanted to escort her from Iowa to Chicago.
Okay.
So she returned to Chicago on September 12th, 1895, and she got to Boston a few weeks later. And so she technically only needed to make it back to Chicago.
Yeah.
But she went back to Boston, and Annie managed to finish her whole journey. Remember, she had 15 months.
Yeah.
With time to spare.
Ooh.
14 days to be exact. And Annie won her bet and received $10,000.
She actually got the money?
She did. She got the money.
Wow.
Because they didn't speculate or stipulate that she had to be on the bike the entire time.
But then that means there was an actual bet.
She won the money, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, I don't know if it was a real bet or if it was just like, hey, if you do this, we'll give you $10,000.
Oh, maybe.
She used the money to move her family from Boston to New York, which was probably a much more friendly place for Jews.
Yeah.
There was a newspaper at the time called the New York World who had written about her journey from the start. And they declared it as the most extraordinary journey ever undertaken by a woman. And for a while after that, she worked as a journalist for the New York World. Her first article was about her trip, and this is how it started. I am a journalist and a, quote, new woman, if that term means that I believe I can do anything that any man can do. But her journalism career was actually very short-lived, and after that, Annie fell into complete obscurity. Nobody knew who she was. And by the time she died in 1947, no one knew who she was or what she had done, and like the only thing that they could find, there wasn't even like an obit, I think.
Whoa.
She just like disappeared. And the only thing in her like will or public death notice or whatever was that everything was left to a granddaughter named Mary.
Okay. That was
so, but nobody knew who that was. So this writer named Peter Zoitland gets a call one day, and it's this researcher, this guy, and he's like, hey, I'm trying to write a story about this woman named Annie Kopczowski or Annie Londonderry. And it says, based on census records, that you're a relation of hers.
Okay.
Can you tell me anything about her? And this Peter guy's like, I don't know who that is. I've never heard of this woman. So he kind of forgets about it, whatever. And then it's like a year or two later, and this same researcher calls again and is like, will you talk to your family? Like, I really want to write about this woman, but I need somebody in your family to give me more information.
Yeah.
And so he starts talking to people in his family, and no one in his family can really remember who she is or what she had done. So he decides to start tracking down this granddaughter named Mary. And he does. Oh. He finds her. And at the same time, Peter becomes very invested in Annie's story. He finds out that he's her great-grandnephew. Okay. And he had started cycling himself, just on a whim, and had been diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly felt this, like, desire to reach a goal before his potential death. And also to get this woman's story out. So he does all this research, and he decides to take his own bike and ride the path across the United States that she took.
Oh, wow.
And he would stop in the little towns that he knew that she had stopped in based on newspapers and stuff. And then he would go to their little public libraries, and he would go through their microfiche film and their old archived newspapers, and he would get all of the information about her trip and who she was and all the things that she said. And of course, he then starts to really learn about her penchant for telling stories. So she's
just putting some sugar on the cookie. Come on.
She was really clever about it. She, in order to keep papers covering her story all along this whole journey, I mean, to keep the attention of people for 15 months, that's pretty impressive.
That is, yeah.
And it would get her more sponsorships, because the more people who were reading about her story, the more a company wanted to make sure that they had their name attached to her.
Yeah.
So she ended up telling all kinds of stories. Here are a couple of things that she said. She, in one paper, she told them that she was an orphan. In another one, she said that she was a wealthy heiress. Oh. Another one, she told them she was a Harvard medical student. Another one said that she was an inventor. The niece of a senator, and probably my favorite, she hunted tigers in India with a German officer.
Oh, man.
Like, she was really going out.
Make your own stories, ladies.
But from his research, Peter was able to put together her actual journey. And she did go to a ton of places. And when he reconnected with the granddaughter, Mary, who happens to be his long-lost cousin, and she's quite elderly at this point, she has kept all of the stuff from Annie's journey.
Oh, wow.
And so when Peter gets there, he's like, you have all of this stuff. And she was like, yeah, I've been holding on to it because I wanted to give it to someone someday. I thought it should be in a museum or something, but I didn't know who to give it to. So now that you've come knocking on my door, I know where it should go.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he ends up making a website for her called AnnieLondonderry.com. And he put photographs of, she had all of these slides from her journey, and she had taken photos on her journey of like, well, people she thought were exotic, right? Because Americans were really like, oh my gosh, look at that weirdly painted person. But they were really cool. Like she at one point was in, I think it was somewhere like Polynesia area or something. And she had photos of the men and their tattoos.
Oh, wow.
And we did that whole thing on Maud Wagner and tattoos. So I thought that was really cool. She had this beautiful photo of this Chinese woman in a garden. And she just had like, he got all of this stuff, and there's just like her passports and her stamps from all these countries and her...
Oh, that's so awesome that none of that was lost.
Right? And I thought that was beautiful. And so he put a lot of it online. You can just actually like go and click on it and look at it. So after he gets done with all of his research, and he's in the midst of his battle with cancer and finding freedom in this bike, he publishes a very long article for Bicycling Magazine in 2005 called Chasing Annie. The woman who changed my life was brave, cunning, daring, and free, and I never met her. And he later went on to publish her biography titled Around the World on Two Wheels, Annie Londonderry's Extraordinary Ride. And this story really struck me because I'm really interested in how women become independent, the process of what it took to get here. And cycling was one way that women really were able to take a hold of their lives and be independent and free. But what's sad is in the recent years, the number of women who ride a bicycle has fallen considerably.
Really?
Yes, like by 50%.
That shocks me.
Right?
Yeah.
Nevertheless, according to a 2014 study conducted by a place called People for Bikes, about 45 million American women rode a bicycle in the previous year, compared to 59 million men. So those numbers are close together, but it's like, oh, you got on a bike once in the previous year. The gap widens, however, when you look at how often and at what distances women ride. And the older women get, the less likely they are to have gotten on a bike in the last year.
My mom doesn't know how to ride a bike still.
I don't know when my mom last rode a bike, or any woman I know that's older. I don't know very many older women who ride bikes.
I don't either. Actually,
I don't know very many women our age who ride bikes, to be fair.
No.
I know enough. I guess I shouldn't say that. I do know a few, but not like avid commuters or cyclists or...
Actually, no.
I do know more men though.
Yeah, I have like quite a few male friends that do races and stuff, because there's quite a bit that goes on in Washington and Oregon and Idaho and Canada too, like trail races and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I
guess I never really thought about it.
I didn't either until I was doing this, and I was like, that actually makes me really sad that this singular item did more to bring independence to American women than any other tool in our country. And women no longer ride it.
What are your theories on why women don't ride?
Well, one of the things that was speculated is that women don't have time. And we had that whole conversation about how it's really hard to balance everything when you're trying to be the one that holds it all together.
Yep. And you're trying to do it all and make it all work.
And if you're going to let one thing go, well, then physical activity is often the thing that you let go.
And it's often your joy.
And I think that also, like for me, I didn't even consider riding a bike. It just hadn't even crossed my mind because that was something you did as a kid.
Yeah, maybe that's something like it's a frivolous.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not what grown-ups do.
And I I really love biking, and I was really scared, though. I guess that could be another thing, that a barrier for people is like, I was really scared of cars and getting hit and
it is
getting
when
injured.
You're out there on the road, it can be fairly aggressive.
And I think that both some cyclists and lots of motorists are really uneducated about what the rules are. Mm-hmm. And so I've had some encounters with very aggressive motorists.
Yeah, so have I.
And I think that that's a deterrent, you know, especially for women who don't like to rock the boat very often, you know, who are told to smile.
I've been almost run over numerous times, and I just yell out, fuck! Like, I'll scream at people because I'm like, you are in a car. You will always win. Don't get aggressive with me with that.
Have you ever been harassed while you've been on the bike?
Yeah. Yeah, that's happened before. Now I know it's when I'm on the trail, I listen to music.
Yeah.
But I leave one butt out and one butt in, kind of like when I run. But you can hear people, you know. I live up on what we call the South Hill here in Spokane, and you have to go up 3 really sharp bends to get up to where I live. And I was like sweating and pumping up this hill, and then like this guy's just like staring at me, and he's saying something, but I can see a look on his face. I couldn't hear what he was saying because I was listening to music, and I was just like, gross. Like, I know what you're saying.
My friend Amy, who also is a large woman, and she got a bike, and she's had, every time she's gotten on her bike, somebody has harassed her every fucking time.
What do they say?
Sometimes they say derogatory things about her weight.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll like make comments about her breathing or whatever. You know, our editor Lucas has had harassment like that when he's run. I don't think so much on the bike, but when he's been out running. And I just find it so fascinating to me, and not really fascinating, but more like abhorrent, that people think that it's any of their business what somebody else is doing with their body.
No.
Like, I don't like it in any regard. Don't tell me I can't have an abortion, but also don't make a comment about what I look like when I'm running. Thank you very much. Yeah. I don't need your fucking opinion.
Well, I always try to be encouraging. Like, there's like some niceties you can do on the road when you're on your bike. You know, you usually nod or smile or wave. You know, people are friendly here for the most part in Spokane. But I remember like one time when I was like deep in my marathon training and I was really, really thin. I was really fit. I was like jogging and I had a really good clip, and there was this woman who was running opposite. She was coming towards me. She was a really large woman, and she looked like, you know, she was getting it done though. And she was running. I could see like she made eye contact with me, and she kind of looked at my body and kind of looked down, like maybe I was going to judge her.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we're both getting it done today. And she smiled, and we kind of ran past each other. And I was like, why can't we do that more?
The people who say things, especially to fat people, when they're out exercising, like, you're the same people who sit on your fucking computers and say like fat people are lazy. Well, you can't have it both ways, idiot.
No.
You can either praise people for being out there, or you can be an asshole. I don't understand why you would, if you think that fat people are lazy and that's why they're fat, and then you see a fat person exercising and then you criticize them for fucking exercising, like,
that makes no sense.
It is so, I can't even wrap my brain around it. No. Like, I don't understand why anybody would criticize anybody for being active. Like, do your level of activity at whatever level you can do it at, and do it to your heart's content. It's nobody else's business. And it also, I think, reflects so much about that person's own insecurities. Like, I would love to see them running alongside. Are you worried about the way you jiggle? Are you worried about how you can't keep your breath and you can't run up that hill? Yeah, I bet that's your fucking problem. Don't take your insecurities out on somebody else who happens to be working their ass off.
Yeah. And doing something to try to and make themselves feel good in any way possible. I do feel like I've had Betty now for maybe 2.5 years. And it was, my husband actually bought me the bike, didn't tell me he was getting me the bike. He surprises me with a lot of things, cat, bike, things like that. which is actually quite lovely. Yeah, he bought me the bike, and it was at a time where I was dealing with pretty severe depression, and he just thought it would be a nice gift. And I was like, oh, like I never even thought about buying a bike for myself.
Yeah.
And then getting on it now, it's like I do feel free, and I feel like I can, you know, burn some of that steam off. Or, you know, I've had moments on my bike where I am sobbing because I'm going through some stuff.
Yeah.
And like I'm on the trail one time and I'm crying loud. And these people are like looking at me and I'm like just having a moment. But, you know, it makes me feel better. I get home and I feel like I let something left on that road, which is awesome.
I would love it if people would post more photos of themselves on bikes. I especially want to see women and non-binary people getting out there, getting on your bike, post a photo of it. Like we should come up with a hashtag.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe hashtag Londonderry. Although that's a place in Ireland. So.
Oh yeah, that might get a little lost in there.
So I really encourage you to get out there and get on your bike and do whatever makes you happy with physical activity. Do yoga, do bar, do CrossFit, do Orange Theory, do whatever. Go for a walk, you know.
You know,
do jumping jacks in your living room. Who cares?
Like us and you're trying to get it all done, don't forget to get it done for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked our combo today.
I did too. And I liked too that Libby and Annie both had moments where they wanted to give up and they didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Literally.
Because I think we're there right now, aren't we? We're in that moment where it's like we could give up, but we're not gonna.
Yep.
Well, thank you for listening, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
And thank you, Lucas, for the wonderful job you do at making us sound lovely and still giving us kudos for our laughter. And also thank you to Jennifer Finch from L7, who recorded and wrote the beautiful song, Shirley, that serves as our intro and outro. And don't forget to buy their album and see them while they're on tour.
Right on.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.